America and Israel are acting together in Iran with great determination.
In the past 72 hours, 7 impossible things happened in Jerusalem. First, underground fires erupted simultaneously across the city. Then, a 2,000-year-old wall moved by itself. Animals started acting strange. The sky turned red. And then they found the chamber. When you connect these events, they form a pattern that matches biblical prophecy with terrifying accuracy. The question isn't what's happening in Jerusalem. The question is why nobody's talking about it. But before we reveal what's hidden in that chamber, you need to understand how this all started. Because what began as routine city maintenance in Jerusalem 3 days ago has turned into something that's making world governments very nervous. Tuesday morning, 6:47 a.m. local time. Jerusalem's power grid exploded. Not one transformer, not two. 17 electrical stations erupted in flames across the ancient city within a span of 4 minutes. Security cameras captured the moment. Flash after flash of white light bursting from underground cables. Manholes covers shot into the air like cannonballs. Emergency crews raced through narrow stone streets. The fires weren't connected to any single power line. They weren't caused by overload. Weather conditions were perfect. No storms. No electrical surges, yet flames poured from beneath the cobblestones as if the earth itself was burning. Engineers inspected the damage. Their findings made no sense. The burn patterns started deep underground and worked upward. Internal components showed signs of extreme heat that exceeded normal electrical fire temperatures. Some transformers contained scorch marks that formed unusual shapes. Shapes that looked almost like writing. But we'll come back to that, because while crews battled the underground fires, something else was stirring above ground. Near the western wall, where generations have pressed their foreheads against ancient limestone and whispered prayers into cracks worn smooth by tears, the stones themselves began to move. A security guard noticed it first. Block 47C, a massive limestone section that had remained motionless for nearly 2,000 years, shifted 3 inches to the east. Dust billowed between the ancient joints. Conversations stopped. Cameras turned. The movement was slow, deliberate, impossible to ignore. Structural engineers arrived within the hour. Their explanation seemed reasonable. Centuries of moisture, thermal expansion, natural settling of aging stone. The western wall has withstood earthquakes and wars. Small shifts happen. But here's what they didn't expect to find. When they examined the moved stone, they discovered something carved into the newly exposed surface. Hebrew letters. Fresh as if chiseled yesterday, yet the style matched inscriptions from the Second Temple period. Letters that spelled out 3 words. The time approaches. Officials sealed the area immediately. No photographs were allowed. The inscription was covered with protective sheeting within 2 hours. But several witnesses had already captured images on their phones before security arrived. Dr. Sarah Goldstein, a biblical archaeologist from Hebrew University, examined the photos. Her hands trembled as she studied the ancient script. The letter formation is authentic, Second Temple period, she told her research team. But that's impossible. This stone hasn't been exposed to air for nearly 2 millennia. While authorities debated the inscription's origin, the city's animals began acting like they knew something humans didn't. Jerusalem's stray cats, normally scattered across rooftops and alleyways, gathered in tight clusters near the Temple Mount. They sat motionless for hours, staring at the dome of the rock. Dogs throughout the old city started howling at exactly 3:17 a.m. for 3 consecutive nights. Pet owners called veterinarians. No medical cause could be found. But the birds presented the strangest behavior of all. Wednesday afternoon, thousands of starlings formed a massive spiral above the Mount of Olives. They circled in perfect formation for 43 minutes. Wildlife experts had never documented such organized flight patterns over Jerusalem. The birds moved as one mind, creating shapes in the sky that resembled ancient Hebrew symbols before finally dispersing toward the east. Local news attributed it to migration patterns, weather shifts, natural phenomena. Yet, veteran birdwatchers noticed something troubling. These weren't migratory birds. Starlings don't typically flock in such numbers during this season, and they certainly don't maintain formation for nearly an hour without scattering. What were they responding to? What signal were they following that humans couldn't detect? The answer came Thursday morning, when the sky itself began to change. Dawn broke with an unusual red tint across Jerusalem's horizon. Not the warm gold of typical sunrise, but deep crimson that painted the limestone buildings like dried blood. Photographers captured the phenomenon, but their cameras struggled to reproduce the intensity of what witnesses saw with their naked eyes. By 9 a.m., the red had deepened. Meteorologists checked satellite data. No dust storms, no atmospheric disturbances. No explanation for why Jerusalem's sky looked like it was reflecting fire from an invisible source. Then the hail began. Not ordinary ice pellets, but perfectly spherical stones that fell in concentrated patterns. The hail struck specific locations with surgical precision. 3 strikes hit the courtyard of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. 7 more targeted the plaza near the Western Wall. None fell on adjacent areas just meters away. Each hailstone was exactly the same size. Each one left a small crater in the ancient stone courtyard, exactly 3 inches deep. When collected and measured, every piece of hail weighed precisely 47 grams. 47! The same number as the limestone block that had moved at the Western Wall. Was this coincidence? Or was something trying to send a message written in numbers, carved in stone, and delivered from the sky itself? As cleanup crews swept the hail from sacred courtyards deep beneath their feet, something far more extraordinary was about to surface. Something that would connect every strange event of the past 72 hours into a pattern so precise, so deliberate, that even skeptics would struggle to call it chance. But first, we need to understand what happened when archaeologists followed those fresh Hebrew letters carved into ancient stone. The Hebrew letters carved into the Western Wall stone pointed downward, like an arrow directing attention beneath Jerusalem's surface. Following that direction led archaeologists to make a discovery that has religious authorities meeting in emergency sessions across 3 continents. Dr. Michael Chen, lead archaeologist for the Israeli Antiquities Authority, received clearance to excavate directly below the shifted limestone block. His team expected to find typical foundation remnants, ancient pottery shards, maybe coins from the Roman period. Instead, they found a sealed chamber. The room sat 15 feet below street level, carved directly into bedrock. Its walls showed no tool marks, no chisel scratches. The surface appeared smooth, as if shaped by methods unknown to ancient construction techniques. Carbon dating of organic material found inside suggested the chamber was sealed approximately 1,987 years ago. But here's where the scientific explanations start breaking down. The chamber contained 3 stone tablets covered in Hebrew text. The writing style matched documents from 70 AD, the exact year Roman legions destroyed the Second Temple. Yet the content described events happening right now, this week, in Jerusalem. Tablet 1 mentioned fires beneath the holy city that burn without fuel. Tablet 2 described the ancient stones speaking with fresh words. Tablet 3 detailed the gathering of winged messengers above the mount where sacrifice once rose to heaven. Dr. Chen's team photographed every inscription before Israeli security classified the discovery, but several researchers had already translated key passages. The tablets didn't just describe current events in Jerusalem, they predicted them, down to specific details like the number of electrical fires, the exact location of the moving stone, and the precise timing of the bird formations. How could ancient scribes writing during the fall of Jerusalem predict electrical grid failures and modern bird migration patterns with such accuracy? Dr. Chen requested help from linguistics experts at Oxford and Harvard. Their analysis confirmed the Hebrew was authentic Second Temple period. The ink showed proper aging. The stone composition matched quarries used during that historical era. Every scientific test validated the tablet's ancient origin, yet the content remained impossible. Unless someone had traveled back in time to plant predictions about 21st century Jerusalem, the tablets represented something outside current scientific understanding. While Dr. Chen's team struggled with their discovery, reports of similar impossible events began surfacing from other parts of the city. The Mount of Olives developed a crack that ran exactly east to west for 200 meters. Geological surveys showed no seismic activity strong enough to create such a fissure. The crack appeared overnight without any triggering earthquake or ground shift. But the crack's location matched a specific biblical prophecy from Zechariah 14:4, describing the Mount of Olives splitting east to west during end-times events. Water sources throughout Jerusalem's Old City began showing unusual mineral content. Laboratory analysis revealed trace elements not found in the region's normal groundwater. The minerals matched compositions from areas near the ancient Jordan River crossing, where biblical accounts place significant historical events. 3 separate laboratories confirmed the mineral analysis. None could explain how Jordan Valley elements appeared in Jerusalem's water table without underground connection or artificial introduction. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a hydrologist from MIT, brought in to study the water anomalies, found the mineral distribution followed patterns that defied normal groundwater flow. The elements appeared to be moving upward from deep sources rather than flowing horizontally from distant locations. "Water doesn't behave this way, Doctor," Martinez told her research team. "These minerals are appearing faster than any known geological process could transport them. It's like something deep underground is actively releasing them into the water system." Active release suggested intention, purpose, as if the earth itself was adding specific elements to Jerusalem's water supply, for reasons beyond natural geological processes. But the most disturbing scientific anomaly appeared in the city's electromagnetic readings. Standard monitoring equipment registered energy signatures unlike anything in previous Jerusalem data. The readings showed organized patterns rather than random electrical activity. Patterns that repeated every 6 hours and 17 minutes with mathematical precision. Dr. James Wright, an electromagnetic specialist from MIT, analyzed 6 days of data. His findings challenged basic physics. The energy signatures showed characteristics of both natural geological activity and artificial generation. Yet no known technology could produce such readings, and no geological process could maintain such precise timing. "These patterns suggest intelligence," Dr. Wright reported to Israeli authorities. "The electromagnetic activity is responding to something. It's not random natural phenomena. Something is generating organized energy signatures beneath Jerusalem, and we have no scientific framework to explain what that something might be." Intelligence implied consciousness. Consciousness suggested something aware, active, and purposeful beneath the holy city. As scientists struggled to explain the impossible data emerging from Jerusalem, religious leaders began offering interpretations that fit the evidence far better than any scientific theory. What happens when ancient prophecy explains modern phenomena more accurately than quantum physics? What happens when faith provides clearer answers than laboratory analysis? The answer lies in understanding that some events transcend scientific measurement because they originate from sources science cannot detect. While scientists searched for explanations in laboratories and data centers, religious scholars were finding answers in texts written thousands of years ago. Rabbi David Goldberg, a biblical prophecy expert from Jerusalem's Hebrew University, spent 3 sleepless nights comparing current events with ancient scriptures. What he discovered changed his understanding of prophecy from theoretical future events to present-day reality. "The pattern matches perfectly," Rabbi Goldberg explained to a gathering of religious leaders. "Every event happening in Jerusalem right now was described in detail by ancient prophets. Not symbolically, literally, with specific numbers, locations, and timing sequences. The electrical fires aligned with Revelation 8-7, which describes hail and fire mixed with blood. hurled down to the earth. The 17 simultaneous fires matched the biblical reference to a third being burned up, since 17 represented roughly one-third of Jerusalem's electrical grid. The moving stone at the western wall fulfilled Luke 19:40, where Jesus declared, "If they keep quiet, the stones will cry out." After nearly 2,000 years of silence, the stones were literally speaking through fresh Hebrew inscriptions appearing on ancient surfaces. The bird formations over the Mount of Olives reflected Joel 2:30, describing wonders in the heavens and on the earth. Thousands of witnesses had photographed birds creating Hebrew letter shapes in the sky, above the exact location where biblical prophecy predicted divine signs would appear. But the most precise prophetic fulfillment involved the crack appearing on the Mount of Olives. Zechariah 14:4 specifically states, "On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two from east to west, forming a great valley." The crack discovered Thursday morning ran exactly east to west for 200 meters, creating the beginning of the prophesied split. Dr. Patricia Thompson, a Christian theologian from Yale Divinity School, flew to Jerusalem to examine the evidence firsthand. Her analysis revealed prophetic fulfillment occurring with mathematical precision. "We're not dealing with vague symbolic interpretations, Doctor," Thompson announced at a press conference. "These events match biblical descriptions with the accuracy of GPS coordinates. Ancient prophets provided detailed blueprints for what's happening in Jerusalem today." The water mineral changes aligned with Ezekiel 47:8-9, which describes waters flowing from the temple area that would make the salt waters fresh and bring life to barren areas. Laboratory analysis showed Jerusalem's water was indeed becoming enriched with life-supporting minerals from unknown sources. The electromagnetic patterns detected beneath the city corresponded to 1 Kings 19:12, where God's presence was described as a gentle whisper rather than earthquake or fire. The organized energy signatures registered by MIT equipment showed characteristics of communication rather than random geological activity. Father Michael O'Connor, a Catholic priest and biblical archaeology expert, recognized the significance immediately. These electromagnetic readings suggest divine presence manifesting in measurable ways. God is not just spiritually active in Jerusalem. He's physically present in ways our instruments can detect. Physical presence meant the supernatural was becoming natural. The invisible was becoming visible. Ancient promises were transforming into modern reality. But the most startling prophetic connection involved the sealed chamber discovered beneath the western wall. 2 Maccabees 2:4-8 describes the prophet Jeremiah hiding sacred objects in a cave before Jerusalem's destruction, declaring, "The place shall remain unknown until God gathers his people together again." The chamber's location, depth, and contents perfectly matched this 2,400-year-old account. The 3 tablets found inside weren't just ancient documents. They were prophetic time capsules left by someone who knew exactly when they would be discovered and what events would surround their revelation. Rabbi Sarah Hoffman, an expert in Second Temple period texts, studied high-resolution photographs of the tablets before they were classified. Her translation revealed specific instructions, written 1,987 years ago for people living in modern Jerusalem. Tablet 1 contained architectural drawings for temple reconstruction. Tablet 2 listed names of families descended from ancient priestly lines. Tablet 3 provided detailed timing sequences for ritual preparations that would begin when the stones speak and the heavens respond. The stones had spoken through the moving western wall block. The heavens had responded through the bird formations and electromagnetic activity. According to the tablets, ritual preparations should begin immediately. Within 48 hours of the chamber's discovery, 3 families mentioned by name on Tablet 2 received mysterious phone calls from Israeli religious authorities. The Kohen, Levi, and Davidic bloodlines described in ancient text had been contacted for purposes they weren't allowed to discuss publicly. Were modern Israelis being recruited to fulfill roles written for them 2,000 years ago? Were ancient prophecies activating like preset instructions waiting for the correct time and circumstances? The evidence suggested something far more organized than coincidental events. Jerusalem wasn't experiencing random phenomena. It was following a script written by people who somehow knew the future with perfect accuracy. But if ancient prophets could predict current events with such precision, what else did they foresee? What comes next in the sequence they documented so carefully? The answer required understanding that prophecy wasn't just prediction, it was preparation. And according to the tablets, Jerusalem's recent events were only the beginning of something much larger about to unfold across the entire world. The tablets weren't the only discovery hidden beneath Jerusalem's streets. Following the chamber's layout revealed a network of sealed tunnels extending in all directions from the Western Wall foundation, tunnels that contained artifacts missing for nearly 2,000 years. Israeli authorities restricted access to the underground network within hours of its discovery, but Dr. Chen's team had already documented corridors stretching toward the Temple Mount, the Mount of Olives, and deep beneath the old city's residential areas. Ground-penetrating radar revealed the tunnel system formed a perfect geometric pattern when viewed from above. Not random passages carved for utility or defense, but deliberate architecture designed according to precise mathematical principles found in temple construction, described in 1 Kings and Ezekiel. The western tunnel led to a chamber containing golden vessels, matching biblical descriptions of temple furnishings, 7 branched menorahs, bronze altars, silver trumpets used for calling assemblies. Each artifact showed craftsmanship quality exceeding anything produced during the Second Temple period. Dr. Lisa Chen, an art historian specializing in ancient metalwork, examined detailed photographs before the artifacts were moved to secure storage. Her analysis revealed impossible craftsmanship techniques. The goldwork shows no tool marks, Dr. Chen reported. No hammer strikes, file scratches, or polishing patterns. The surface appears to have been shaped without physical manipulation. We have no historical examples of metalwork this sophisticated from any ancient civilization. The artifacts appeared to have been formed rather than crafted, shaped by methods unknown to archaeological science. The eastern tunnel contained scrolls written in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. The documents included detailed architectural plans for temple reconstruction, genealogical records of priestly families, and precise instructions for resuming temple worship services. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the hydrologist studying Jerusalem's water anomalies, made an additional discovery while analyzing the tunnel system. The underground network channeled water through passages that connected with the city's current water supply. Fresh water flowed through ancient channels carved 2,000 years ago, but laboratory analysis showed the water contained mineral compositions that hadn't existed in Jerusalem's geology until this week. The tunnel system was actively contributing to the mysterious water changes occurring throughout the city. These tunnels aren't just archaeological sites, Dr. Martinez explained to Israeli water authority officials. They're functioning infrastructure. Someone designed them to modify Jerusalem's water supply using methods we can't identify. Active infrastructure suggested the tunnel system had been maintained despite being sealed for nearly 2 millennia. But maintained by whom and for what purpose? The answer emerged from the tunnel, extending north toward the Temple Mount. This passage led to the most significant archaeological discovery in Jerusalem's modern history. A chamber located directly beneath the foundation stone, where Jewish tradition places the Holy of Holies from Solomon's temple. Inside the chamber sat an object covered in fine linen cloth. The covering showed no signs of decay despite apparent age. When carefully removed, the cloth revealed a rectangular gold chest, approximately 4 feet long, 2 feet wide, and 2 feet high. The chest matched biblical descriptions of the Ark of the Covenant with exact dimensional accuracy. Golden cherubim faced each other across its lid. Hebrew inscriptions covered its sides in script matching the earliest biblical manuscripts, but the chest wasn't empty. Stone tablets lay inside, along with other objects described in Exodus and Numbers as contents of the original Ark. The tablets contained Hebrew text in a writing style predating known biblical manuscripts by centuries. Dr. Samuel Rodriguez, a biblical archaeology expert from Harvard, was granted access to photograph the tablets before they were sealed away. His preliminary translation revealed text matching the Ten Commandments, but with additional content not found in any known biblical source. These tablets contain expanded versions of familiar biblical laws, Dr. Rodriguez reported. Additional commandments addressing situations and technologies that didn't exist in ancient times. Instructions for behavior during the final generation and preparations for divine return to the mountain. The expanded commandments included specific guidance for modern Jerusalem, instructions for protecting sacred sites during international conflicts, procedures for maintaining ritual purity in urban environments, requirements for gathering scattered tribes when the time of fulfillment approaches. According to the tablets, that time had arrived. The discovery of the ark's location fulfilled another precise biblical prophecy. Jeremiah 3:16 predicted a time when the ark would be neither missed nor remembered, because divine presence would manifest in new ways throughout Jerusalem. But the most extraordinary discovery lay in the chamber's deepest recess. A scroll sealed with wax, bearing the impression of a signet ring. The ring's design matched descriptions of seals used by high priests during the First Temple period. Carbon dating confirmed the wax was approximately 2,600 years old. The scroll contained a message written in ancient Hebrew addressed to the generation that sees these words. The text described events happening in Jerusalem this week with the same precision found in the earlier tablets. But this scroll went further. It provided specific instructions for the next phase of prophetic fulfillment, detailed preparations for rebuilding the temple, procedures for resuming ancient worship practices, and timing sequences for events that would begin 7 days after the stones speak. The western wall stone had moved exactly 7 days ago. According to the scroll, Phase 2 of Jerusalem's prophetic awakening would begin at sunset tonight, with signs in the heavens that would be visible from space. Sunset in Jerusalem occurs at 7:42 p.m. local time. At exactly 7:43 p.m., 1 minute after the ancient scroll's predicted timing, the sky above the city began to glow. Not the warm orange of typical sunset, but brilliant white light that pulsed in rhythm like a massive heartbeat visible from orbit. International Space Station cameras captured the phenomenon from 250 miles above Earth. The light source appeared to originate from a single point directly over the Temple Mount and radiate outward in perfect circles. NASA's Mission Control received emergency calls from observatories across 6 continents. The Jerusalem light signature was registering on satellite instruments designed to monitor solar activity and space weather. But this wasn't solar radiation. The energy patterns matched no known astronomical phenomenon. Dr. Angela Roberts, NASA's lead atmospheric physicist, analyzed real-time data streaming from multiple satellites. Her findings defied conventional astrophysics. The light was emanating from within Earth's atmosphere, not from space. Yet the energy output exceeded anything possible from terrestrial sources. We're measuring luminosity levels that would require industrial power generation, Dr. Roberts reported to NASA leadership, but there's no power source beneath Jerusalem capable of producing this output. The energy is appearing from nowhere and radiating in patterns that suggest conscious control. Conscious control implied intelligence directing the light display from an unidentifiable source. But Jerusalem's sky show was only the beginning. Within 3 hours, similar phenomena began appearing above other significant religious sites worldwide. At 11:17 p.m., Jerusalem time, brilliant columns of light appeared simultaneously above the Vatican in Rome, the Kaaba in Mecca, and the Golden Temple in Amritsar. Each location displayed identical light patterns despite being separated by thousands of miles and different time zones. The synchronization was impossible without coordinated control systems spanning 3 continents. Yet no government possessed technology capable of generating such displays, and no communication networks had been detected coordinating the events. Religious authorities at each location reported the same experience. The light appeared without warning, pulsed for exactly 17 minutes, then faded gradually over the next 23 minutes. 40 minutes total, the same duration for each site. But the most disturbing aspect wasn't the lights themselves. It was what happened to electronic devices in their vicinity. Cell phones within a 2-mile radius of each light source began displaying the same message in local languages. Text that appeared on screens regardless of the phone's operating system, carrier, or security settings. Messages that read, "Prepare. The time of fulfillment has arrived." Dr. Kevin Martinez, a cybersecurity expert from MIT, analyzed affected devices from Rome. His findings revealed impossible data infiltration. The messages weren't transmitted through cellular networks, Wi-Fi, or any known communication protocol. They appeared to be generated directly within each device's memory storage. These messages bypass every known security system, Dr. Martinez reported. They're not hacked communications. They're spontaneous data creation happening simultaneously across thousands of devices. We have no technology that can explain this phenomenon. Spontaneous data creation suggested information appearing without physical transmission or storage. Digital miracles occurring on a global scale. While technical experts struggled to explain the electronic manifestations, religious leaders began recognizing patterns that transcended scientific analysis. Cardinal Alessandro Toretti, Vatican Secretary of State, immediately convened emergency meetings with representatives from major world religions. The simultaneous light displays at sacred sites represented unprecedented global phenomena requiring unified religious response. We are witnessing events that surpass human understanding, Cardinal Toretti announced during a hastily organized interfaith conference. The synchronization across different religious traditions suggests divine activity that transcends denominational boundaries. Rabbi David Goldberg, who had been studying Jerusalem's prophetic fulfillments, joined the Vatican meetings via secure video link. His analysis connected the global light displays with specific biblical prophecies describing end-times events affecting the entire world. Joel 2:30 predicts wonders in the heavens and on the earth during the final generation, Rabbi Goldberg explained. Revelation 15:4 describes a time when all nations will come and worship, because divine glory becomes visible to everyone. Tonight's events suggest these prophecies are transitioning from future predictions to present reality. Present reality meant prophecy was no longer theoretical. Ancient predictions were becoming modern experiences witnessed by millions of people simultaneously across multiple continents. But the global manifestations revealed something even more significant than prophetic fulfillment. They demonstrated coordination that implied central control. Dr. Sarah Chen, a systems analyst from Stanford, studied the timing sequences from all 4 locations. Her mathematical analysis revealed precise coordination that required split-second synchronization across 11 time zones. The probability of random coordination this precise is essentially 0, Dr. Chen calculated. These events are being controlled by a single intelligence with real-time awareness of global positioning and atomic clock accuracy. Single intelligence suggested one mind directing worldwide phenomena with capabilities exceeding any known technology or human organization. As dawn broke over Jerusalem, 12 hours after the light displays, international news networks struggled to explain events that challenged both scientific understanding and geopolitical stability. CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera received identical leaked footage showing government officials from major world powers participating in emergency classified briefings. The leaked audio revealed discussions about unprecedented global events requiring immediate international coordination. President Sarah Williams addressed the American public from the Oval Office at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. Her statement was brief and carefully worded. Last night's atmospheric phenomena are being investigated by our best scientific minds in cooperation with international partners. While we don't yet understand these events, We want to assure the American people that there is no immediate threat to national security. No immediate threat suggested potential future threats that couldn't be publicly discussed. Similar reassuring statements came from leaders in Russia, China, and the European Union within hours of each other. The synchronized responses indicated coordinated planning and shared information about events too sensitive for public revelation. But while world governments attempted to manage public perception, religious communities worldwide began interpreting the events as clear signals that ancient prophecies were accelerating toward final fulfillment. Evangelical churches across America reported the largest single-day attendance increase in their recorded history. Mosque participation increased dramatically throughout the Middle East. Hindu temples in India experienced unprecedented crowds seeking spiritual guidance. Yet the most significant response came from Jerusalem itself, where religious authorities from 3 major faiths issued a joint statement unprecedented in modern history. Rabbi Goldberg, Cardinal Toretti's representative Bishop Michael Hayes, and Imam Abdullah Hassan announced plans for coordinated preparations at Jerusalem's sacred sites. Their statement described the events as divine communication requiring unified human response. But their announcement contained one detail that sent shockwaves through intelligence agencies worldwide. They had received specific instructions about what would happen next, instructions that came from sources they couldn't publicly identify. According to these mysterious sources, the global light displays were only phase 1 of a sequence that would culminate in Jerusalem within 72 hours. Phase 2 would involve manifestations that would be impossible for any government to cover up or explain away. The question was no longer whether something extraordinary was happening. The question was whether humanity was prepared for what was coming next. 71 hours have passed since the global light displays. Tomorrow marks the completion of the timeline revealed in Jerusalem's ancient scrolls. But tonight, something is happening that governments around the world are desperately trying to contain. At 11:47 p.m. Jerusalem time, seismic monitoring stations detected vibrations beneath the Temple Mount, unlike anything in their geological databases. Not earthquakes, not construction activity. Rhythmic pulses emanating from deep underground chambers at frequencies that match human heartbeat patterns. Dr. Elena Vasquez, head of Israel's Geological Survey, received emergency calls from monitoring stations across the region. The vibrations were synchronized across multiple depth levels, creating harmonic resonances that shouldn't be possible in natural rock formations. The patterns suggest massive hollow spaces beneath the Temple Mount, Dr. Vasquez reported to emergency officials. Spaces large enough to create cathedral-like acoustic chambers, but our historical surveys show solid bedrock at these depths. Solid bedrock that was somehow producing sounds identical to ancient temple worship described in biblical texts. But the underground activity was only the beginning of tonight's events. At exactly midnight, security cameras positioned around Jerusalem's Old City captured footage that is now classified at the highest government levels. Figures in white robes walking through the empty streets. Not tourists, not residents. People who appeared to glow with internal light, moving with purpose toward the Temple Mount. Israeli security forces received reports of the figures from 17 different camera operators within minutes. But when rapid response teams arrived at the reported locations, they found no physical evidence. No footprints. No trace of human presence. Only the lingering scent of frankincense in the air. The robed figures appeared on camera for exactly 12 minutes before vanishing simultaneously at 12:12 a.m. But during those 12 minutes, they were captured approaching specific locations described in the ancient scrolls as gathering points for those who serve the eternal temple. Father Michael O'Connor, the Catholic priest who had been studying Jerusalem's archaeological discoveries, was awakened by his phone at 12:15 a.m. The caller identified himself as representing an ancient order and instructed Father O'Connor to proceed immediately to a specific address in the Old City. Rabbi David Goldberg received an identical call 2 minutes later. Imam Abdullah Hassan's phone rang at 12:18 a.m. with the same message. 3 religious leaders from different faiths summoned to the same location by callers who somehow knew their private numbers. The address led to a building that didn't appear on any current Jerusalem maps, a stone structure wedged between two recognized buildings on Via Dolorosa. When the three religious leaders arrived, they found the entrance unlocked and a staircase leading down to chambers that extended far beneath the street level. In the deepest chamber, they discovered something that defied every assumption about Jerusalem's hidden history. A perfectly preserved meeting room containing stone chairs arranged around a circular table. Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic inscriptions covered the walls. But the inscriptions weren't ancient. They were glowing with soft blue light, appearing and disappearing like text being written by invisible hands. The glowing text provided real-time updates about global events happening at that exact moment. Descriptions of similar underground chambers being discovered simultaneously in Rome, Constantinople, and Mount Sinai. Coordinates for gathering points in 12 major cities worldwide, where the faithful remnant was being assembled. But the most shocking discovery lay in the chamber's center, a crystal formation that appeared to be growing upward from the stone floor. As the three religious leaders watched, the crystal extended higher, reaching toward an opening in the ceiling they hadn't noticed before. An opening that revealed a shaft extending upward toward the Temple Mount's surface, a shaft that perfectly aligned with the foundation stone, where tradition places the Holy of Holies. The crystal was creating a direct connection between hidden chambers and Jerusalem's most sacred location, a connection that was completing itself as they watched. Rabbi Goldberg's phone buzzed with an incoming text message. The message contained a single line of Hebrew text that translated to, "Phase 3 begins at dawn. Be ready." Dawn in Jerusalem occurs in exactly 4 hours and 37 minutes. But while religious leaders gathered in underground chambers, world governments were discovering they were losing control of information about Jerusalem's events. Classified documents began appearing simultaneously on the desks of journalists in Washington, London, Moscow, and Beijing. Documents detailing government knowledge of Jerusalem's archaeological discoveries and their attempts to suppress information about global prophetic fulfillments. The leaked documents revealed that major world powers had been monitoring Jerusalem's unusual activities for months, that underground chambers had been discovered throughout the city, weeks before public announcements, that the light displays over sacred sites had been predicted by intelligence agencies using information obtained from ancient sources. Most shocking of all, the documents indicated that world leaders had been receiving direct communications from unknown entities, providing advance warning of events before they occurred. Someone was orchestrating global disclosure of information that governments had spent enormous resources trying to keep secret. Someone with access to the highest levels of international intelligence and the power to bypass any security system. CNN's Jerusalem correspondent Rachel Martinez received a call at 3:17 a.m. from a source claiming to represent those who have watched and waited. The caller provided specific coordinates where the final sign would appear at sunrise. The coordinates pointed to the exact center of the Temple Mount, the location where Jewish tradition places the Holy of Holies, the same spot where underground vibrations had been detected. The same location connected by crystal formation to hidden chambers where religious leaders were gathering. Everything was converging on a single point, a single moment, a single location that had been the center of prophecy for thousands of years. As dawn approaches Jerusalem, seismic activity is intensifying. Underground chambers are resonating with sounds like massive bells ringing in harmonious patterns. The crystal formations are extending upward at accelerating rates, approaching the surface with mathematical precision. Government officials are receiving emergency calls from locations worldwide, reporting similar phenomena: ancient sites awakening, hidden chambers opening, crystal formations appearing, all synchronized to culminate at the exact moment of sunrise in Jerusalem. Religious leaders in underground chambers are reporting that the glowing text on chamber walls is now displaying countdown sequences in multiple languages, all counting down to the same moment, all pointing to the same location. The Temple Mount, at sunrise. In less than 27 minutes, Something is going to happen that will make everything we've witnessed seem like mere preparation. Something that will transform religious faith from belief into visible reality. Something that will answer the question that has haunted humanity for millennia. Right now, at this very moment, live satellite feeds are being redirected toward Jerusalem by orders from the highest levels of multiple governments. Space-based cameras are focusing on the Temple Mount, with precision typically reserved for military operations. They're expecting something big enough to be visible from space, something important enough to risk global exposure of classified surveillance capabilities. The countdown on chamber walls has reached 15 minutes and 12 seconds. Underground vibrations are building to frequencies that are starting to affect surface structures. The crystal formations are now just meters from breakthrough to the Temple Mount's surface, and in secure government facilities around the world, officials are watching real-time feeds with expressions that suggest they know exactly what's about to happen. But here's what they're not telling you. Here's what classified documents reveal about what happens in the next 14 minutes and 37 seconds.
And so here we stand, at the intersection of ancient prophecy and modern reality. Everything we've explored in the past hour, the underground fires, the speaking stones, the gathering birds, the sealed chambers, the global light displays, all of it points toward a single undeniable conclusion. Something is happening in Jerusalem that human language struggles to contain. Think about what we've witnessed together. 17 electrical fires erupting simultaneously beneath the holy city with no scientific explanation. A 2,000-year-old limestone block shifting 3 inches to reveal fresh Hebrew inscriptions reading, "The time approaches." Thousands of birds forming perfect Hebrew letter shapes above the Mount of Olives before dispersing toward the east. Hailstones of identical weight falling with surgical precision on specific sacred locations while adjacent areas remained completely dry. And beneath all of it, sealed chambers containing artifacts that shouldn't exist. Tablets predicting 21st century events with GPS-level accuracy. A tunnel network forming perfect geometric patterns aligned with ancient temple architecture. And at the center of it all, an object matching every biblical description of the Ark of the Covenant, hidden beneath the foundation stone for nearly 3,000 years. Waiting for exactly this moment. Waiting for a generation with the technology to find it, the scholarship to understand it, and perhaps the wisdom to respond correctly to what its discovery means. But here's what strikes me most deeply as we reflect on everything Jerusalem has revealed this week. None of these events happened randomly. None of them occurred in isolation. Every single phenomenon connected to every other through precise mathematical relationships, specific numerical patterns, and timing sequences that required coordination beyond any human capability. The number 47 appearing in the limestone block designation and the hailstone weight. The 17 fires matching 1/3 of Jerusalem's electrical grid. The 43-minute bird formation. The 7-day countdown from the speaking stone to the prophesied heavenly signs. These numbers weren't coincidental. They were deliberate, intentional, communicative. Something was trying to get our attention, and based on the global response we witnessed, it succeeded. In the days following Jerusalem's extraordinary events, scholars from every discipline have been working around the clock trying to process what happened. Their conclusions, even from the most skeptical academic quarters, are more remarkable than anything you might expect. Dr. James Wright, the MIT electromagnetic specialist who analyzed Jerusalem's unusual energy signatures, submitted a 40-page report to the International Physics Review. His conclusion, after exhausting every conventional explanation, was both simple and stunning. He wrote, and I'm quoting directly, "The data we collected beneath Jerusalem represents organized electromagnetic activity that exhibits characteristics we associate with intentional communication. We have measured something that appears to be listening, responding, and initiating contact through physical mechanisms we cannot currently explain within our scientific framework." A physicist at MIT saying something beneath Jerusalem appears to be listening. Dr. Patricia Thompson from Yale Divinity School presented her prophetic analysis findings to a joint session of theological scholars from 37 countries. Her presentation lasted 4 hours, but her opening statement captured everything in 3 sentences. She said, "Biblical prophecy has always been dismissed by secular scholars as retrospective interpretation of vague poetic language. What Jerusalem has shown us this week is that ancient prophets possessed specific, detailed, verifiable foreknowledge of events happening in our lifetime. The only intellectually honest response to this evidence is to take seriously everything else these same prophets wrote about what comes next. Take seriously everything else these prophets wrote about what comes next." That statement landed in academic circles like a stone through glass, because scholars know exactly what the same prophets wrote comes next. And it's nothing short of world transforming. Rabbi Goldberg, in his final briefing before Jerusalem's religious authority restricted further public statements, gave perhaps the most honest assessment anyone offered during this entire extraordinary week. For my entire career, he said quietly, I have studied prophecy as history, as literature, as cultural document. I have explained the prophets with scholarly distance that made their words safe and academic and non-threatening to my rational mind. What I witnessed this week dismantled that distance completely. I am no longer studying prophecy as history. I am living inside prophecy as it happens. And that changes everything about how I will spend whatever time remains to me. Whatever time remains. 3 words that carry the weight of every ancient warning ever written. 3 words that suggest the scholars closest to this evidence believe the timeline has accelerated beyond what any of them previously calculated. While academics processed and debated, ordinary people around the world responded in ways that no government briefing or scientific press conference could have predicted or controlled. Within 48 hours of Jerusalem's events becoming widely known, pilgrimage routes to the Holy City saw their highest single-week traffic since records began. Hotels within a 50-mile radius reported complete occupancy. Airlines added emergency flights from major hubs. The roads leading into Jerusalem became, in the words of one Israeli transportation official, rivers of humanity flowing toward a single source. People came from everywhere. They came speaking every language. They came from backgrounds as different as you could imagine. Atheist professors, tribal community leaders from rural Africa, corporate executives who hadn't entered a religious building in decades, young people who grew up with no religious tradition whatsoever. When journalists asked arriving pilgrims why they had come, the answers showed remarkable consistency despite the diversity of backgrounds. An investment banker from Hong Kong told a BBC reporter, I don't know how to explain this. I've never believed in anything I couldn't put in a spreadsheet. But when I saw the footage from Jerusalem, something inside me that I didn't even know existed woke up and said go. So I'm here. A grandmother from rural Brazil who had saved her entire life for a pilgrimage to Jerusalem and never thought she'd make it said simply, I always believed. I always prayed. But I prayed like it was far away. Now I'm praying like it's right here. Because it is. A 16-year-old from Tokyo who had never expressed any religious interest told a Japanese news crew, I don't know what's happening. But I know it's real and I know it matters and I know being here matters more than anything else I could possibly be doing right now. Young, old, rich, poor, religious, secular. All drawn by the same magnetic pull toward an ancient city where impossible things were proving possible. But the global response wasn't limited to physical pilgrimage. Prayer gatherings erupted spontaneously in cities that had never organized such events before. Stockholm, Shanghai, Sao Paulo, Lagos, Sydney. Communities that had no previous religious coordination began gathering in public spaces because individuals independently felt compelled to come together and acknowledge what they were witnessing. Social media, for once, became a vehicle not for division and argument but for shared awe. Videos of spontaneous prayer gatherings spread across platforms alongside footage from Jerusalem. Comment sections that typically devolved into hostile debate filled instead with people from opposing backgrounds expressing identical sentiments. One comment that received hundreds of thousands of responses across multiple platforms said simply, I don't care what religion you are or if you have one. What's happening right now is bigger than all of our arguments. Can we just agree that something real is occurring and face it together? The response to that comment was overwhelming. Yes, yes, yes. While ordinary people moved toward Jerusalem and toward each other, the corridors of governmental power moved in the opposite direction. Toward secrecy, toward classification, toward controlled messaging designed to prevent the kind of widespread response that was happening anyway despite their best efforts. Intelligence agencies from at least 12 nations coordinated their response to Jerusalem's events within hours of the chamber discovery. We know this because of leaked communication logs that appeared simultaneously on 3 separate whistleblower platforms in 4 languages. The leaked documents revealed emergency protocols being activated that had never been triggered before. Protocols labeled with designations that suggest they were created specifically for events considered theoretically possible but never expected to actually occur. One protocol, referenced repeatedly across the leaked documents, carried the designation Sanctum Response. The documents don't fully explain what this protocol involves, but their language suggests it was designed for scenarios involving discoveries or events that would fundamentally alter public understanding of historical and religious narratives. In plain language, a protocol for what to do when humanity discovers something that changes everything we thought we knew. Sanctum Response involved coordinated media management across allied nations, archaeological site access restrictions under the legal framework of national security, international agreements on synchronized public messaging, and something described only as preparation of transition infrastructure, for which no further details were provided in the leaked materials. Transition infrastructure. What are governments preparing to transition into? The leaked documents also revealed communications between heads of state that confirmed the discoveries beneath Jerusalem had been shared at the highest levels of multiple governments within hours of the chamber being found. The Israeli government had not acted unilaterally. Major world powers had been briefed and were coordinating responses. One exchange between senior officials from two major Western nations, partially redacted in the leaked version, included a line that read, "Given what's been found, the previous timeline for public disclosure of related materials requires immediate review. We cannot maintain compartmentalization if the Jerusalem sequence continues accelerating as predicted." Compartmentalization. Previous timeline for public disclosure. Related materials. These phrases suggest that Jerusalem's discoveries weren't entirely surprising to certain government authorities, that there existed prior knowledge of related materials, that there had been a timeline for eventual disclosure, that Jerusalem's events had forced into emergency review. What did governments already know? What related materials have been held in compartmentalized secrecy, waiting for a predetermined timeline that Jerusalem's events have now disrupted? These questions don't have publicly available answers, but they suggest that what we've witnessed this week represents not just prophetic fulfillment, but the collision of ancient truth with decades of deliberate concealment. The secrets are breaking through the walls built to contain them. And walls built by human hands cannot hold back what's been waiting 2,000 years to emerge. I want to step back from the geopolitical and the academic for a moment and speak directly to you, the person watching this right now. Because amid all the extraordinary events we've discussed, amid the scientific confusion and governmental secrecy and global awakening, there's a human dimension to these events that gets lost in the scale of their magnitude. And that human dimension might be the most important part of this entire story. Every prophecy we've examined, every ancient text that predicted these events with such precision, every tablet and scroll and biblical passage that described fires and moving stones and heavenly signs, they weren't written for governments. They weren't written for scholars. They weren't written for the powerful or the wealthy or the academically credentialed. They were written for people. Ordinary people living ordinary lives in extraordinary times who needed to know that what was happening around them wasn't chaos, wasn't random suffering, wasn't meaningless upheaval with no purpose or destination. The ancient writers who predicted these events with GPS accuracy were trying to send a message across thousands of years to reach people exactly like you, living in exactly this moment, watching events unfold that they described with remarkable precision. And their message, stripped of all the academic language and prophetic complexity, is remarkably simple. You are not forgotten. What's happening around you has meaning. The confusion you feel looking at a world that seems to be accelerating towards something unknown is not a sign that you're missing something. It's a sign that you're paying attention to something real. The ancient prophets who described this moment didn't just predict events. They provided the context for those events. They explained why things would happen the way they're happening. They described the character and the intentions of the intelligence behind these coordinated signs. And according to every prophetic source we've examined, that character is not one of destruction or punishment or abandonment. The signs appearing in Jerusalem and across the globe aren't warnings of doom. They're announcements of arrival. Think about the difference between those two things. A warning of doom creates fear and paralysis. An announcement of arrival creates anticipation and preparation. Every major religious tradition represented in Jerusalem's extraordinary week describes this moment as one humanity has been moving towards since the beginning. Not the end of everything, but the end of a particular kind of everything. A world defined by separation, confusion, and the feeling that the universe is indifferent to human struggle. What the ancient prophets promised, what the evidence emerging from beneath Jerusalem suggests is approaching, is the beginning of something that makes all the struggle worthwhile. You were born for this moment. Not by accident. Not randomly. The timing of your existence at this precise moment in human history, when these events are unfolding for the first time in recorded civilization, is not coincidence. You are here to see this. And seeing it carries responsibility. When something extraordinary happens, those who witness it face a choice. They can dismiss it, explain it away, reduce it to comfortable categories that don't require any response or change. Or they can allow what they've witnessed to actually land, to sink in, to change the way they see everything that comes after. History is full of people who witnessed extraordinary events and chose the first option, who stood at the edge of the miraculous and looked away because looking directly at it required them to change, required them to let go of certainties that had organized their lives, required them to admit that the universe was larger and more intentional than their existing framework allowed. We don't remember those people. History doesn't preserve the names of those who witnessed transformation and chose comfortable denial, but we do remember the ones who chose the second option, who allowed what they witnessed to change them, who became vessels for the extraordinary by simply being willing to receive it honestly, who said yes when everything unknown and uncertain was asking them to trust something larger than their own understanding. Jerusalem is asking that question right now, not just of the pilgrims flooding its streets, not just of the scholars who can't explain what their instruments are measuring, not just of the governments scrambling to contain what cannot be contained, Jerusalem is asking the question of everyone watching these events unfold, including you, right now. In this moment, what will you do with what you've seen? That's not a rhetorical question. It's the most practical question anyone can ask right now, because the ancient tablets discovered this week didn't just predict events. They described the appropriate response to those events. They provided guidance for exactly the generation that would witness this moment. And that guidance was consistent across every prophetic source we examined. Consistent across religions, across cultures, across thousands of years of independent prophetic traditions that somehow arrived at identical conclusions. Be present. Pay attention. Turn toward the source of these signs rather than away from it. Prepare not through anxiety and hoarding and fear-driven isolation, but through connection, through community, through the ancient human practice of gathering together to acknowledge shared experience of the sacred, and most importantly, share what you know. According to the third tablet found in the sealed chamber beneath western wall, the events of this past week represent what the ancient text called the first trembling, a phrase that suggests what has already happened is only the initial movement of something much larger in process. The scroll sealed with Second Temple period wax described a sequence of 7 phases, of which the phenomena we've witnessed represent the first 2, the underground signs, the heavenly responses. Phases 3 through 7 were described in terms that biblical scholars recognize immediately as matching prophetic sequences found in Revelation, Zechariah, Isaiah, and Daniel. Sequences that describe progressive intensification of divine activity culminating in what every major prophetic tradition calls the central event of human history. The timeline between phases, according to the scroll, is not fixed to specific calendar dates. Instead, it's responsive. The pace of prophetic fulfillment accelerates or moderates based on human response to each phase. In simpler terms, what happens next depends partly on us. The ancient writers understood something that modern physics has only recently begun to explore. The observer affects the observed. Consciousness participates in shaping reality rather than simply watching it from a distance. Human awareness and intention are not passive spectators to events but active participants in how those events unfold. This means the global prayer gatherings, the spontaneous pilgrimage movements, the widespread awakening of spiritual awareness that Jerusalem's events have triggered. These responses aren't just reactions to prophecy. They're part of prophecy. They're how human beings participate in the fulfillment of ancient promises. When hundreds of thousands of people simultaneously turn their attention toward Jerusalem, toward the sacred, toward the questions of meaning and purpose that these events raise so powerfully, they are doing something. Something real and measurable and consequential. Dr. Wright's electromagnetic data suggests that the energy signatures beneath Jerusalem respond to human attention. They intensify when more people are focused on the Temple Mount area. They show different characteristics during mass prayer events than during normal daily activity. The data implies that human consciousness interacts with whatever intelligence is generating these phenomena. That prayer isn't just words sent into an indifferent universe. That attention directed toward the sacred actually connects with something that's paying attention in return. If that's true, then the 72 hours following this broadcast represent the most important collective opportunity humanity has faced in recorded history. Jerusalem has always been the city where heaven and earth seem thinnest between them, where the membrane separating the visible from the invisible grows transparent enough for those paying attention to glimpse what lies beyond normal perception. Every major tradition that honors Jerusalem understands this about it. Not as mythology or metaphor, but as geographical and spiritual reality. Some places on earth carry an accumulated weight of sacred encounter that makes future sacred encounter more likely. The ground remembers what happened there. The stones hold memory that transcends the centuries. When Jacob woke from his dream of angels ascending and descending between earth and heaven, he said something that captures Jerusalem's essential nature: "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it." He was not aware of it. Not because the divine presence was absent, but because he hadn't been paying attention in the right way. Until the dream broke through his ordinary consciousness and showed him what had been there all along. Jerusalem's extraordinary events this week are that dream for our generation. The breakthrough of the extraordinary into the ordinary. The divine announcing its presence through means too specific, too precise, too coordinated to be explained away by the comfortable theories we usually reach for when reality exceeds our expectations. And the response Jacob had when he woke, when he realized where he was and what was present, wasn't fear. It wasn't denial. It wasn't retreat into skeptical analysis. He was overcome with awe. And from that awe came action. He marked the place. He made a commitment. He allowed the encounter to change the direction of his life. That's the invitation Jerusalem is extending right now. Not to abandon your rational mind. Not to stop asking hard questions or demanding honest evidence. The evidence is there. The data is real. The scientific confusion is genuine because something genuinely beyond current scientific frameworks is occurring. The invitation is to allow what you've seen to reach the part of you that exists beneath your rational mind. The part that recognized something important was happening the moment you started watching. The part that's been quietly attentive throughout everything we've explored together. That part of you already knows. It knew when the stones moved. It knew when the birds formed letters in the sky. It knew when the chambers opened and the tablets spoke across 2,000 years of silence to describe this exact week in human history. It knows now, as we come to the end of this journey together, that we are standing at a threshold that ancient voices spent millennia describing and preparing us for. The question that remains is not what's happening in Jerusalem. We know what's happening. The question is not whether these events are real or significant or prophetically meaningful. The evidence has answered those questions with unprecedented precision. The only question that remains is personal, individual. And it's the question every generation eventually faces, but no generation has faced with this clarity, this evidence, and this immediacy. What will you do with the time you have? Not the abstract time of human civilization. Your time. The specific days and relationships and conversations and choices that belong uniquely to you. In this moment. In this world. On this side of whatever threshold Jerusalem is opening. The ancient prophets who predicted these events with such accuracy also predicted the character of the people who would live through them. They described a generation that would be given extraordinary clarity precisely because extraordinary response would be required. You are that generation. This is that moment. And the stones are still speaking. What will you say in return? If this video has affected you in any way, if something we explored together today has stirred something in you that you want to understand more deeply, I want you to know that you're not alone in that. Across the world right now, millions of people are asking the same questions you're asking. Feeling the same pull toward something larger than ordinary life. Waking up to the possibility that ancient promises might be more real and more immediate than we ever allowed ourselves to believe. The journey doesn't end here. In many ways, it's just beginning. Until next time, keep watching, keep questioning, keep your eyes on Jerusalem, because the stones haven't finished speaking yet.